All right, CSL. So we are back with the second edition of the Choke City podcast. With me, I got Marcos and Myles. You guys will recognize them from the previous podcast.
Or, just being around the forums, generally speaking.
No one goes on those. Tim might be joining us. So if he pops in, hopefully he can. But if not, it's just going to be the three of us. So topics we're going to talk about real quick today are some of the day 30 and after trades, some of the more interesting ones, some surprise teams, good and bad. And if we have some time towards the end, we can talk about some of the early season awards. So actually, the first thing I want to talk about is how shitty Myles's top 100 list is. Can we just talk about that for a couple of minutes here?
It is awful. I mean, good Lord. Why did I even make it? I must have been drunk or something.
How is Carl White only number 21, 29?
Well, let's talk about the fact that when I first did the list, I put him at 45.
45?
Yeah, goodness. So props to me for bringing up kind of high.
Oh, Marcos brought him up?
Yeah. I don't know. For me,
I'm only
the way that I kind of did this whole thing was I just went team by team and grabbed names and ratings that stood out to me, players that have performed well statistically as well, because sometimes ratings obviously aren't everything. And I know White is a fantastic defender. Like I said, he's the best defender in the league. Like, whether that was at 45 or 29, I still thought he was the best defender in the league. I personally, when I first did the list, and again, like I said, it was a first draft. Like on my first draft, I completely missed John Wall, for example. Like I just forgot to put him on there.
Brett would have crucified you.
Absolutely. He's already going to because of Porzingis, but I hold firm to my stance that Porzingis is not a top 300 player. So.
Oh, wow. Shots fired there.
But it was just one of those things where, like, on that first draft, I just basically said to myself, hey, White's a great player. He'd fit great on any team. But, at a certain point, right, in the list, you're talking about guys that you're as the foundation of your team. And White, to me, is not the foundation of a team. White is a very fantastic first floor of this building that I'm hypothetically making based on the team. But foundations to me, those are the guys. Like, for example, you still have two players on the top 20 that have not been listed yet. They're somewhere in the top 20. Yeah, Austin Bledsoe. To me, those guys are more important to the overall Phoenix Suns than Okaro White is. Now, if you take one of those three players off, you might have similar results. You will have similar results. You'll lose a lot more games, regardless of which of the three you took off. But to me, the combination of Bledsoe and Austin, for example, is more important than White and Austin or Bledsoe and White. And that's why, for me, White isn't a top 20 player or top 25 or whatever.
Yeah, and I definitely get that, like, different people have different, like, opinions on, different people value different things. And it's kind of hard to say, like, you can't definitively say that, like, some of these players are better than others. Like, it's all opinion based. So,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's just something to talk about. And obviously people aren't just going to be like, oh, I like this person, this person, this person. Most of the time when people bring up, like, comments and stuff, it's like, oh, I disagreed with this, because you agree with, like, eight people on the list and there's just one or two that didn't. So you just talk about the one or two that, you don't necessarily agree with. But honestly, as long as Bledsoe is ahead of Derrick Rose on this list, all will be forgiven. But if Derrick Rose is ahead of him, Myles, the comment section is going to be blown up
this weekend. Just keep it cool and wait for the weekend, and let's see what happens then.
All right, let's jump into those day 30 trades.
I just want to say something first.
Sure.
I love the name of this podcast. That's it. Just go ahead.
I thought you would, Marcos. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Go on.
So,
Marcos,
all right.
You know what you should do? You should start your own podcast and you should title it Clutch City Podcast.
Oh,
How close you were when you
rival
3-0.
podcast.
I'm gonna name it Luck City. You know.
Hey, just win.
At least you're real.
All right, so let's jump into the trade. So the first one we have, this one's a huge blockbuster. This was between the Sacramento Kings and the Boston Celtics. So in this one, Sacramento sent Ben McLemore, the Clippers 2021st, the Lakers 2021st, but it's top 29 protected, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's really a 2021 first. And in return, they received Westbrook and Burke. So what are your guys' thoughts on Marcos? Let's start with you. Do you have is this a win-win? Do you see a winner out of this trade?
It's hard to judge because Sacramento is the clearly winner of this trade. You know, they got Westbrook for a decent haul. You know, the return was not it was not cheap, but it didn't hurt them. You know, so but at the same time, I don't see Dennis as a loser of this deal because basically he was having a very good year without Russell Westbrook, so he was able to add McLemore, who doesn't have the frustration and injury concerns that Westbrook had, and he was able to add like 2 firsts that are looking like 2 lottery firsts for a guy who wasn't playing. So at the end of the day, it wasn't the greatest trade of all time for Boston, but I can see why they did it. I can see the value for them, and I'm not comfortable saying Dennis lost this deal, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see what you're saying. Like, to me, Sacramento definitely got the best player in the trade. I don't think anyone would argue that. Westbrook's probably like a top 5, maybe top 10, depending on who you put up there. But he's right up there with the best players in the league. Yeah. But one thing you do have to give Boston credit for, so Westbrook's 30. So they do get much younger out of this deal. They get McLemore, who's young, and they get two good firsts. Probably they're both projected to be lottery first. So at least I'd consider them to be. So they do get a lot younger, and they keep their window open. And honestly, I mean, we'll get to them in a little bit later, but I mean, they're playing really well without Westbrook. So really, I almost kind of see them adding McLemore, for nothing because they weren't even really playing Westbrook. So, and they were still doing well. So they're really just adding to, I almost think like Mike Conley is playing better without Westbrook because he's got the ball in his hands more. Fareed's playing really well.
So. McLemore's feeding with Boston is just amazing, you know?
Yeah.
He's a player that will come and be the first scoring punch without taking the ball away from Conley, who's a player that can produce a lot more when he has the ball, you know? So basically, it's not addiction by subtraction because if Dennis was playing Westbrook, probably his team would be better than it is right now. But at the end of the day, it was a still great team without Westbrook and an even better team with McLemore now, you know?
Yep. What do you think, Myles?
I absolutely agree. I mean, this is one of those trades where whichever side of the coin you see as far as like who got the better value in the trade, you can't deny that it turns into a better fit for both teams. For Sacramento, they've been trying to consolidate assets into a top player for so long because they've done such a great job of having a lot of players with positive value. But, guys get minutes crunched because they haven't, they have so many of them. And so turning, McLemore, a couple of those picks into a bona fide star like Westbrook, that's the kind of move that teams like the Kings, they needed to make in order to get over the hump. Because you need to have those guys that are going to play like top 10 players. They don't necessarily need to be top 10 players. In this case, they are. but they have to play that way. And for the first time, I feel like the Kings have a player who can produce at that level. And then for Boston, you know, I've said, I feel like I've said resource allocation in a lot of articles and comments lately, because there have been a few teams where they have a lot of resources, but they're allocated weirdly. For Boston, having both Westbrook and Conley really limited Conley. And we saw what he could do when Westbrook went down in the playoffs. He absolutely went off against Toronto.
Yep.
And I think that in this case, letting Conley play more, even if he's not a long-term fit in Boston now that they went a little bit younger with McLemore, will give him more positive value than he had previously. And getting a guy like McLemore who fits their roster construction better, who plays better like with Conley in terms of not both of them needing to have the ball to do something, I think that really kind of helps Boston in terms of better allocating their resources. And they added a couple first-round picks, good-looking first-round picks too, to the mix. So I don't even think we need to see what those picks become in order to say that this deal worked for Boston, because I think it works for Boston even if those picks become like 20s picks.
Perfect.
I think that this deal was just a really good fit for both teams as far as what they need.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, he kind of hit the nail on the head. I really like this trade for both teams. Sacramento, like you said, they've had all these resources. I think they've been waiting for the right, top piece to become available. And Westbrook's a great two-way player, because I know that team's very built on defense. So, and Westbrook's among the best as far as defense. So he fits right in along that team. And Boston has so many good players. Like, they've got Fareed and Conley that now they get the ball more. So now they become more valuable. And McLemore comes right in, and he's that three-point gunner that they like. And then they get these picks to go on top of it. So I like you said, I think it's a win-win for both. So it'll be curious to see if Sacramento can become a contender. They're already a contender, but I should say if they can make the finals, because they've been so close so many times.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say, because I think the whole league was actually hoping or at least expecting to see this deal happen like for 4 seasons from now. They've been doing a great job of piling up assets and making them available for trading for the right player. But the right player wasn't just available for them until now. Maybe, I don't know. I've not had that conversation with BT, so I can't say properly if he passed it up on another star, just like, I don't know, Paul George or anyone who has been moved in that time.
Sure. Yep.
But yeah, go on.
BT has been patient, and I have to really commend him for that. McLemore has been on his trading block on and off for forever now, and they've always been looking to consolidate. And I know, I've talked with him a couple times. I think when I was starting, when I first took over Denver and had those 4, whatever you want to call them in terms of value players, I checked in with him and said, hey, I'm obviously going to be moving lots of players. Like, are you interested in any of these guys? I know McLemore's on the block. And he knew he could do better than Josh Smith or MKG or Vucevic or whoever, because he wasn't willing to just trade him for the sake of trading him. And at that time, this was like a year ago, when I messaged him, I remember saying something like, hey, McLemore's been on your block for forever. I know he doesn't fit exactly what it is you're doing here. Is there something we can do? And he just did such a great job of saying, you know what, I'm waiting for the right deal. I'm waiting for the right player. These aren't the guys that I'm trading McLemore for. And so to that end, I applaud him.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, he's very good at, keeping his window wide open. It's not like he needed to find a guy really quick, and kind of bring in, one of these top guys, because he's got a really young squad. So his window isn't super, super small. So he did a great job for not just not just making a trade at the first one that comes along, but kind of, finding one that actually fits him really well.
Yeah.
So All right, let's move on to the next trade. This one, Marco should be very familiar with. This is the Lakers, Bulls, Brooklyn Nets trade. So this one's pretty recent. And in this trade, the Lakers sent DeLon Wright, Vince Hunter, and Mirotic. And they get Noah, Millsap, and Minnesota's 2021 first unprotected. Chicago sent Noah, Millsap, Jimmer Fredette, and the Minnesota pick, and they got Mirotic, Lawson, and Hunter. And then Brooklyn's part of this deal was pretty simple. They just sent Lawson, and they got Wright and Jimmer Fredette. So, Marco, since you're involved in this one, why don't you start us off with what you like about this deal? And was there anything that was it hard to part with some of these guys? Especially Noah, who is such a fixture on your team.
Yeah, it was pretty hard to move on from Noah and also from Derrick Rose, because those guys were the foundation of the team for like 6 seasons. So it's 6 seasons. It's like 4 real life years. So we've been together for a long time. I've been trying to build a championship caliber team around those guys forever, rebuilding, retooling, and putting a lot of work to make it happen. And now that it happened, now that we got the ring, I felt it was time to move on and find some new challenge, So we found some good deals right there. I won't deny it that we had some good offers on the table. So yeah, because I need to be, I need to be realistic. One thing I've always said is I wasn't going to rebuild unless I had the player I was going to build around on my team, and that player was available in Marcus Smart, and I think that Smart trade was pretty good for everyone as well. But basically, that trade set up this one. Having Smart, I was trying to find a stretch 4 who could play with him, and searching around the league, Mirotic was the best option available outside of Porzingis, who was like too expensive to get, So I just basically moved the Minnesota pick for Mirotic, who I thought it was a very good guy, And it was funny because I was talking with Tim about Drew Holiday for Mirotic swap, and at the end of the day, it was Drew Holiday for Mirotic, Vince Hunter, and DeLon Wright, who we were able to turn into Ty Lawson, which was a completely different part of this deal, But at the end of the day, I got great value for the pick, great value for Drew Holiday as well, and I think it made sense. So why not?
Yeah, I like how you
Holiday go to Utah.
What? Sorry?
You're talking about Drew Holiday, but Drew Holiday was traded to Utah for Decker.
Yeah, he was traded for Decker in the Minnesota 21st round.
Oh, that's where you're from.
He's saying he basically took Drew Holiday, was originally offering him to the Lakers, but then ended up trading him to the Jazz. But then with what they got from the Jazz, they kind of flipped it for Mirotic. So
it was
and some others.
That wasn't a four-way, But one trade set up the other. One trade opened up the possibility of having the other trade, making the other trade.
Got it.
Yep. Yeah, I like how you so it looks like Mirotic was your main target, and you used kind of the Minnesota 2021 first to kind of acquire him. And then you also got Wright and Hunter out of the deal. And then even though Wright wasn't a guy that you liked, because you flipped him. So what was your thinking there, especially since you got much younger in recent trades, and then you immediately trade DeLon Wright for, what is Lawson, 31? Something like that?
So Marcos dropped out of the call.
Marcos is out.
A second ago. But I'll speak on the DeLon Wright part. Not that I have any inside knowledge of it from any of the parties, but I think the DeLon Wright to Ty Lawson move made sense, at least for Brooklyn. I know for a fact, just because
Sorry, guys.
Brooklyn's. You're good, Marcos.
My internet failed.
Brooklyn's a young team, and they didn't need a guy like Lawson anymore. And I personally like DeLon Wright. I know that DeLon Wright has his fans and his detractors around the league, but I think that he does hold value. He is a good player, and I think that was worth it for Brooklyn to give up Lawson in that deal. Where Lawson fits in for Chicago and why Chicago made that swap, Marcos, while you were gone, Doug asked you about that, so maybe you want to touch on it now on why he swapped Wright for Lawson after getting Wright.
Yeah.
Well,
so
hold on. Wait. The problem with Lawson is
team.
Yeah. The problem with Lawson is that he consistently underperforms his ratings under CSL league rules. Or if you want to, be technical, if you want to just be straight about it, in the DDS3 engine, under the default rosters, Lawson always underperforms. DeLon Wright, I have no idea what the hell is going on with him. He was fantastic in Phoenix. Logically speaking, he should have done very well for us too with the Lakers, but he never did. His shooting percentages tanked the first year, so I'm like, okay, maybe this is just the seasonal variance fluke that sometimes happens with DDS. And then year 2 happens, and all of a sudden he's shooting under 40% for like the first however many games, and I'm like, okay, this is not correcting itself. I was like, good thing day 30 trade was already agreed to, because otherwise his trade value would have been fucked. So, but yeah, go on, Marcos. You were saying about Lawson versus Wright.
Yeah, basically, I was trying to review why it remains somehow competitive to remain a playoff contender, and I was looking at Wright's contract, and I'm not I've been trying to build championship teams for a while, and one of the things I emphasized most was not having any contracts I consider a flat out bad contract, and Wright was underperforming, and he had lots of value, and he has lots of value. He's a very good player, but I was afraid I'd end up with a player that would be considered overpaid. So basically, I took an opportunity at making Lawson performing better next to Smart, and I don't know if I'll be able to fix him, because he is not a guard that likes to drive to the cup, just like Derrick Rose. And my team was basically built around a guy like Derrick Rose, who was a driver, Yeah. And I don't know if he's going to perform and succeed next year more, because both need the ball. But I think it was a low risk, high reward kind of deal, He has 3 years in his deal. DeLon Wright has 4. We have a pretty young foundation, if you exclude Ty Lawson and Al Horford. So when those guys are gone, we're going to have lots of cap room and a very good foundation in those years. First round draft. Yeah, basically that's it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know kind of like what Myles touched upon. Brooklyn didn't really need Lawson. They're not contending right now, so it makes sense to get rid of him. And I know he's actually been after Wright ever since he passed up on DeLon Wright in the draft and picked up PJ Hairston instead. Honestly, I don't know what the deal is with Wright either. He played so great with us in Phoenix. I don't know if it was just a fit thing, but I know the 1 year he shot over 50%. The other year he shot like 48%, so his shooting was fine. He never had much of a three-point.
Right.
But Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what his problems were in the Lakers. I'm curious to see how he'll do in Brooklyn going forward. But so Tim, now since you joined us,
Yep.
how hard was it to give up Mirotic, who was a guy you really liked when you drafted him last year, to get the Minnesota first? And a lot of people would consider that pretty risky trade because who knows what the Wolves are going to look like next year.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, and Marcos will tell you this, he has been after Mirotic for
forever.
Since I drafted him, pretty much. And I was like, no,
Yep.
never gonna happen. He was basically like the friend-zoned creepy guy that was like, give me a chance. I'm like, ew, no. But then I started looking more at it, and I loved Mirotic shooting percentages in the playoffs. I'm one of those people that firmly believes there's some sort of hidden rating within the game that when it comes to playoff performances, there's so overachieve relative to the regular season ratings and statistics. Others will underachieve. Most will stay about the same. So, I wanted to keep him, but then the more I started looking at him, it's like those kind of hybrid forwards have never really fit my system. Mirotic is kind of weird in terms of his shooting form and distribution, in that he's a fantastic 3-point shooter.
Mm-hmm.
On the other end, he's got really great ability to draw fouls. And normally I would just say screw it, just have him, have a nice split between the two, drawing fouls and 3-pointing, except for the fact that he has Chandler Parsons disease with really terrible jump shooting, and that really nerfs his efficiency. So what's sort of balance here? And I didn't really want to take the time to go through and figure that out, And so finally, I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll take the $40 million plus the cap room, whatever number that is. I will gamble with the Minnesota first round pick. I'm fine trading Wright. He has never, he didn't work out for his first season, and then the second season, even worse happened. And then, so, I was just like, screw it, this makes the most sense. Fine, we'll truly go into a rebuild for the first time ever, like not trying to improve at all. And then, of course, we start winning games. So it is a gamble. It is a calculated risk, but it is one that I think we had to take. We were, frankly, even if we re-signed Lynn, even if we re-signed Biombo, we weren't a contending team. We were in that sort of weird upper middle treadmill team where we would have had to rely on injuries and stuff from other teams to have any sort of hope at all. Plus, Pacific, Phoenix, Sacramento, trying to get above anywhere other than third, and Golden State coming up. I was just like, no, I have to hit the bottom first. So
yeah.
So where does you talk about the Minnesota trade? In order for you to consider the trade successful, like how high does that pick have to go? Like if it ends up pick 8, do you still consider this trade successful?
Depends on the draft class next year, which,
good point.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a case of how deep will next year class be. Will I find a way to magically force my way to trade up like I did for 2 straight years in getting Mirotic and Zizic? So that's an angle too. So, and it also depends on who do I get with that cap space. That's also a huge part of this too. Ultimately, what does that cap turn into? So, still a lot of variables left to determine, and and we'll also have to see what Dennis gets out of my pick next year. Because that was kind of in the back of my mind too. How do I walk this tight line between making sure I can suck for Simmons, but yet also next year be high enough that the Celtics don't get as good a pick as they hope, without putting myself in the treadmill So,
Yeah.
it's really a balancing act we're going through right now.
Cool. All right. I think we've talked about. Yeah, go ahead, Marcos.
I think, personally, from my point of view, I see this trade as a chance for team to finally find his star. He's been like after this guy forever. He's been after the player he'll be able to build around, and he hasn't been able to find the player. He found many good players, many all-star caliber players, but not the player he was able to build his team around, not the player with the correct age, the correct skill set, and the correct, fit for his system. So basically, it's a chance to have two high picks and see if one of them hits and gets the star player, or have that $40 million cap space and get the star player as well. So basically, it's team just screaming, "Fuck out! I'll try it again," and I need the star player to build around.
Yep.
I hear you. All right, let's move on to the next trade. So the next trade we have is this is another one that I think is a win-win for both teams. We have Minnesota Timberwolves and the New York Knicks. So in this one, the Timberwolves sent Dragic, and they got Kevin Love and Schroeder. Obviously, the Knicks got the others. So it's interesting because to me, they kind of turned one player, an aging Dragic, into two assets in Love and Schroeder. So I actually like this move as opposed to some of their other ones. It gives them an interesting front court between Love and Monroe. Not sure how that's going to gel. But they've at least got some talent in the front court, and Schroeder's a pretty capable point guard. So, Myles, we'll start with you. What do you think about this trade?
I like this trade more for the Knicks, simply because I like Dragic. I don't know how much more time he has left of playing like above his ratings. I mean, maybe not too far above his ratings, but he's been consistently scoring over 20 points a game, since we started. So, I'm really interested to see how that works out for the Knicks. That's, them replacing Chris Paul. And, I don't know. The Knicks team is interesting to me. I can't put my finger on it, but I like them getting Dragic. For the Wolves, Schroeder could be a good point guard. He could also not be a good point guard. They've got David Stockton, who fits that description. So I don't really know. The Wolves, I guess let's see how they look. And because Moxie is known for kind of going on trade sprees.
Myles, you there?
Myles?
Did I cut out?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit on that one.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know. But basically, all I'm saying is for the Wolves, anything can happen for them. Moxie loves different soon, and maybe it's good, maybe it's bad.
Gotcha. Marcos, what do you think?
That was a win-win in my books. They had nothing to do with Dragic right there. New York was in huge need of point guard help since they dealt Chris Paul, and Dragic. He's kind of aging very well, He was only a scorer. He was a scorer and playmaker, and he is still a scorer and playmaker, even though he's been aging. He's like 33 right now. I don't know, but he's
33.
His drops have still allowed him to excel at the two things he was good at. That was scoring and playmaking. So basically, he's a very good player and 19 million cap room, expiring. So, and at the same time, Minnesota was in need of talent, and I think Kevin Love is more talent overall than Goran Dragic. And they also got Schroeder, so it's a 2-for-1. they were in badly need of talent right there. So anytime you can turn a 33 years old point guard aging, into a 2-for-1 swap, you did okay in this deal.
Yeah, I kind of agree. What do you think, Tim? Anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, same basic scenario. It really worked out for both teams, And one thing to keep in mind is when you look at not only Dragic is expiring, but also Marc Gasol's expiring. If they decide to renounce all their expiring contracts, they will be free agency players next year. So they could be another team that gets in. We've got Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis as their top headlining free agent. There's some interesting RFAs that are coming up. I'd have to look to see who they are against, but from a financial standpoint, this can't be overlooked for New York either. I do think Roxy will end up flipping either Monroe or Love. I don't think that front court is going to work out. Neither one of those players can shoot, and I think that's going to be a problem, to be honest. And neither one plays great defense either. So to me, Monroe and Love are duplications of each other, and one of them will get flipped for a better fit. Hopefully not till after next year, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I kind of agree. They do. They're both scorers with great rebounding and not the best defense. So they are kind of, duplicates as far as that. The one thing with Kevin Love that I always thought was weird. So when I look at his preferences, like he's so good at drawing fouls, but he's only like a 10. His drive is only at like 10. I never understood why no one brought it up to 50 or
actually. When I had Kevin Love, I was trying to do it. I had him at 40 drive, I think, but someone just started to work him to shoot more again. And I think his most successful season was with us, maybe. I don't know. But he had he shot like almost 43% from the field, which was a career high for him. Mm-hmm. And he had like 10 free throw attempts per game. So basically, I turned him into a 57 true shooting percentage guy, and 57 is right at the average mark, So basically, I got a player that wasn't very efficient to become efficient, and I'd like to see someone do this to him again because he's very talented as a scorer.
Because so I'm looking at his stats here, and of course the year you had him is the year that is 2015, where none of the stats are showing up; they just vanished somehow. So we can't verify that. But I'm looking at in 2016, which was the year after. He was averaging 10.5 free throws per game, and he's an 82% free throw shooter. So, and he was shooting 43%. So that would kind of line up. That's who you traded Love to, right? Washington.
Yeah. Yes.
So that would make sense. So like when you were done with him, you traded him to Washington. That was his best year, by far. It looks like in the CSL, and then it looks like his free throws attempts just going down and down and down. I guess it's because people are having him shoot more, and his field goal percentage is going down and down and down. To me, they just kind of tanked his value. Like this year he's only shooting 36%. Last year he shot 35%. I think they should have him driving more. One, to get more contact, and two, just to get some more like dunks or layups or whatnot.
That's where his value is, Yep. You're not going to find value in a guy who shoots like 36 3-point shooting percentage for his career. So it's not like he's a sniper. It's not like it's worth to make him be a catch and shoot 3-pointer. 3-point kind of player, So basically make him drive. He has great handles for the position. He has good passing as well, so he can create out of driving. He's not going to commit lots of turnovers when driving. He's going to drive against power forward, who are players who are not supposed to be stopping drives. And also, he has great IQ. So he'll be able to develop something when he's driving. He's not going to mess. He's not going to make something like shitty every time he's driving.
Agreed. So Roxy, if you're listening, make him drive more, and you'll see a much better player. So,
and
all right.
Tim hopes that Roxy is not listening.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he trades him or something. But yeah, that's a good point. I totally forgot that Tim had him there. So, all right, let's move on to the last trade we want to talk about. There were a lot of trades going down. We're not going to talk about them all. We're not trying to pick and choose, but we're just trying to pick some trades that haven't been talked about a ton. Like there are some that drew a lot of controversy or whatnot. To me, they've kind of already played themselves out on the forum. So we're trying to just talk about some of the others. So the last trade that I want to talk about, this one's brand new. This is the Golden State Warriors Washington trade, where Golden State sent point guard Cotton and Trevor Lacey. And in return from the Wizards, they got Ross, Crowder, and Mitchell. So Tim, why don't you start us off? What do you think about this trade?
Yeah, I like it a lot for the Warriors. I talked to Brett extensively about Crowder in that draft when when everybody was kind of thinking, okay, it's going to be, Mirotic is going to go number 4 to Detroit, and I hated Whiteside because I hated his low defense and some other things about him. And so, I was like, well, who am I going to draft now? And I was thinking about Crowder. He still needs to lose some weight. But once he's done that and he gets some shot preference work, and he's going to be a really fantastic 3-and-D player. And, that will add a nice counterbalance to, these stars that Golden State has. And I think Embiid is one of the RFAs this summer too as well. So,
yep.
People with cap space, Max Embiid. Wait, that's us. So, yeah, he'll be an excellent complementary piece. I've never been too impressed with Cotton. I always thought he's kind of been overrated, to be honest. And maybe that's just my own preference for having a point guard who actually wants the ball, who demands the ball. Yeah. I think the way DDS works, at least with the teams that I've had that have been successful in MP leagues, having a ball dominant point guard has been, really sort of primary focus. And I think that's why we did so well with Lynn last year. So, I think it's really a fantastic trade for Golden State. For Washington, I'm not real high on Cotton. Lacey is a very interesting player. I remember he's a guy we looked at quite a bit for when his draft class came up. Don't remember who we went with, not Lacey, but I think he'll be an interesting player to watch and see how he does in Washington. And who knows, maybe Cotton can surprise us and, do well in Washington. But really, I think Cotton's success in New Orleans was because Anthony Davis is there, to be honest. So, but we'll see what happens.
Good point. Myles, what do you think?
I think this is a safe trade for Washington and a potentially better trade for the Warriors, but a lot of it comes down to, can Crowder become the player that everyone expects him to be, and can Ross become an efficient offensive player? Because I'm pretty certain that 18 different teams have listed Terrence Ross on their trade block recently with the exact quote of needs preference work, but will be really good.
Yeah,
and
I was one of them.
Yeah, I don't know if none of these teams use preference work on Terrence Ross or if he just needs so much. But the point is that he could be really good, apparently, according to everyone, but maybe he won't be. Tony Mitchell's whatever, he's depth. And then Crowder, again, we all just said he could, Tim just said he could be really good, but he's got to do this. He's got to lose weight. He's got to make more shots. So it could be a really good trade for the Warriors. For the Wizards, I think that because we know what Cotton is, that's a trade that works for them, at least in the interim. Cotton is, they haven't had a point guard, I don't think. And so Cotton can, regardless of your opinion on if his type of player works, he can at least be that steady hand for them for now. And Lacey.
On the other hand, the Wizards also have Tyus Jones, don't forget.
Right, and maybe Cotton's in between while Tyus Jones develops. The other thing too for them is Trevor Lacey was a really heavily sought after player when he was drafted. Yeah. A lot of people seem to like him. I don't think he's really gotten a fair shake in Golden State, definitely not this year. And so it's one of those things where, like, I don't think we'll know if there's a winner to this trade or who won this trade for a year or two. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many things that need to happen for both sides for this to truly look good for either one of them.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys. I kind of like this trade for both teams from the aspects, the Golden State Warriors, their Hydra offense it clearly wasn't working. They're among
they just never used it. They never did it.
Yeah.
Oh, they never did it? Okay, no. I was going to say because they're at the bottom of the standings again. And I don't know. In my opinion, with the talent they have on their team, they should not have the second worst record in the league. But
I agree.
But I know that they've been looking for, a good 3, and I think Crowder can be that guy. Like Tim said, he does need to lose a little bit of weight, but I think his potential, I think he has the potential to be the best individual player in this trade. I'm not really a big fan of Ross. He doesn't really play much defense. He can score, and if you're willing to put in a lot of preference work to make him shoot more threes, he can be valuable, but, I'm not a huge fan of his. So for me with Cotton, I've always been a fan of him. I get that he seems to be pretty polarizing among the league. I think on the right team, he's a very good fit. On a team with a dominant scorer, he'll just feed them the ball, which is what you want, your guys to do. His defense, he's got pretty good defensive ratings. Honestly, I think he's just too thin. He's 6 foot, 165 or something like that. To me, that's too small. But I think he can be fixed. That's my personal opinion. And so to me, even though I think Crowder's the best player in this deal, to me, point guards are more valuable as a whole just because of the scarcity. So I think Washington more than makes up for it just by acquiring Cotton. I know a lot of people, looked into Cotton. Obviously, Jeff waited until now to make the deal. He didn't find something he liked, but and like you guys mentioned about Lacey, I actually like Lacey's ratings. He looks like he's a pretty solid combo guard type. He's got 60 passing, 63 handling, 64 scoring. His defense isn't great, but it's not bad. It's right around 60 as far as defense and steals. So he seems to be a solid depth guy.
He looks like a lot of Lance Stephenson, a less shot hungry Lance Stephenson, but with better playmaking skills.
Yeah, I am curious to see what they do with Cotton and Tyus Jones, if he tries to play them both at the same time or what he plans to do. So, like you guys, it might take some time to figure out a winner, but I kind of like it for both teams. What do you think, Marcos?
The thing I like less about this deal is because Washington is taking the ball out of Gary Harris' hands, and he's been fantastic since he's been there. He's a player that he was supposed to be a great defender, but actually he's a very, very, very complete player. And I think his best asset is his secondary playmaking. He has got 86 IQ to go along with heights mid-60s in passing and handling, and the guy is averaging 5 assists in 26 minutes per game. So he was doing a great job of sharing the ball. He has a better than 2 assist to turnover ratio, so he wasn't being bad at all. But I think at the same time, I think he's going to coexist pretty well with Bryce Cotton. I think they can be a pretty good press defense duo. You know, they have great intangibles, both of them. They're very intelligent players. They could play next to each other. And Lacey coming off the bench for one of those guys, he'll be I hope he starts shooting because he wasn't shooting at all at Golden State, and that killed his value. I don't know why he wasn't shooting, but well, if he can figure out a way to shoot.
And there goes Marcos.
Oh, lost Marcos again. All right. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to add as far as trades or anything? Or if not, we can move on to the next category.
Okay.